Our next speaker is Rajni Bala. Rajni grew up in India and immigrated to Canada 12 years back. She currently works as a financial analyst. In the past, she has worked in marketing and sales of high technology businesses. And she's a practitioner of Vipassana meditation. And I think that's what she's going to talk a bit about in her talk.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Today I'm going to talk about my search for how to resolve conflicts. If you have a conflict with someone, how do you resolve it? Do you become passive or aggressive? Passive means being cold or distant without communicating for days, weeks, or months. On the other hand, an aggressor lashes out without showing any kindness and using harsh words. That way of communication affects relationships badly, leaving both parties involved in the conflict unheard and in despair. Having a conflict is quite natural because we all come from different paradigms and perceptions. Conflict arises when we are not connected with ourselves. A spiritual teacher, Taknithan, says, when you cannot connect with yourself, how can you connect with others? Connecting with oneself means understanding inner needs and feelings. How do we cultivate awareness of our inner motives and hidden emotions? Is there any other way of dealing with conflict silently without assessing or passing judgments? We can deal with every conflict by understanding our needs and feelings, communicating non-violently of others empathetically to develop harmonious relationships. By way of meditation and silent observation, we can become aware of our needs and feelings. A very Indian philosopher, J. Krishnamurti, says the ability to observe without evaluating is the highest form of intelligence. Today I'm going to share my personal journey of understanding conflicts, how it arises, and what I have learned through my experiences about how to resolve them. I grew up with parents who have completely different approaches to dealing with conflicts. They got married when my mom was 16 and my dad was 19 years old. If it wasn't for an arranged marriage, or if they have gotten married later, they wouldn't have chosen each other, nor stayed together until this day. My mom has always been a very sensible, strong, emotionally independent, and quite a reserved woman. She doesn't easily share what's in her mind. On the other hand, my dad is laid back, expressive, and emotional man. My mom behaved passively, while my dad was more aggressive. While I was growing up, I noticed that whenever they had conflict, my mom would become cold or distant, whereas my dad would express himself right away. Not only that, if my siblings or I did something opposed to my mom's desires, she would stop communicating with us for days. On the other hand, my dad would get angry or very emotional whenever they had any conflict between themselves. They would never look at the root cause of it, but would make peace with each other just to keep the harmony in the household. I inherited a mixture of good and bad qualities from both of them. The first time I had got my hands on a book called Your Erroneous Zone by Dr. Wayne Dyer, it had a profound effect on me. The book wasn't about resolving conflicts, but breaking free from the trap of negative thinking patterns. At the time, I didn't understand that book in its entirety, as I couldn't practice or apply those principles to my life. I reread it again a few years later with a fresh perspective, but still couldn't understand it. Still couldn't understand my behavior patterns. We are so wired and conditioned based on our past experiences that it takes days, months, sometimes years to bring the change in our subtle behavior patterns. There was no way I was near to understanding how to handle conflicts, even on minor things. I continued to seek a better method of resolving conflicts. I have been an explorer all my life. About 15 years ago, when I got to know about Vipassana meditation, I knew that I was on the right path. Vipassana meditation was different than any other meditation. It is non-sectarian, without any religious beliefs and dogmas. It teaches to be a silent observer of your thoughts, emotions, and feelings on a physical level called sensations. By observing my sensations, I would be able to better understand my emotions and would be better equipped to handle them. Unfortunately, I did not practice it seriously. To get the maximum benefit from this technique, one needs to practice diligently twice daily. It requires a lot of patience and practice at a longer period of time, depending on how evolved the person is. However, I continued my search on a superficial level. I still wanted to understand how to resolve conflicts internally and with others. When someone told me that I wasn't a proud person and lacked self-respect, I did not understand the real meaning of having self-respect and self-esteem at that time. Therefore, my initial thought was that this could be the reason why I find myself getting into these old thinking patterns of either being passive or aggressive. There is a saying, when you're ready, the teacher will show up. I came across Nathaniel Branden's book, The 6 Pillars of Self-Esteem. In this book, Nathaniel talked about 6 concepts: living life consciously, self-acceptance, self-responsibility, self-assertiveness, which means being authentic to yourself, practice of living purposefully, and personal integrity. To the best of my knowledge about myself, I had all these things to a certain degree. By nature, I'm a very disciplined and self-motivated person. But this book did not help me to hone my skills in dealing with conflicting situations, nor when someone is being condescending towards me. While my goal to learn how to resolve conflict did not actualize, I gained a lot of insights by reading these books. How did I know that? As I was progressing in other areas of my life, my friends and my external environments were clearly changing. My constant desire to understand myself and to better see things clearly continued when I realized about 5 years ago that meditation is the only way for me. It would not only help me to understand myself better, but would improve my communication with others. I had been to a couple of Vipassana meditation retreats and decided to deepen my practice. I have been meditating seriously for about 5 years and rarely felt lonely since I took refuge in Vipassana meditation. I'm mostly grounded and try to look at things with a neutral perspective. Through Vipassana, I have developed a capacity to identify my motives. For instance, if I'm operating from some sort of ego or craving others' attention. My mind has become more rational and I operate less and less with my emotions. In other words, I have learned how to control my emotions, but note the difference. I do not manipulate them. I clearly see my insecurities and vulnerabilities as they come and go. Having said that, I still have compassion and empathy for others, and I still pass judgments on others. I sometimes blame others for my problems, but soon I get back to my senses when I reflect on each interaction of mine, usually after the fact. Vipassana has helped me to build confidence in myself, to make better decisions, and be responsible for them. Since I'm mostly conscious about my actions, which helps me to better focus the consequences of most of them, I have learned to relinquish control of my future and have a strong conviction that things will work out for or against my wishes. Thus, it assists me in not getting overwhelmed by ups and downs of my daily life. In addition, maintaining my regular practice is preparing me to better equipped to handle the unknown challenges of life. As Carl Jung said, knowing your own darkness is the best method of dealing with the darknesses of other people. Vipassana meditation has helped me to have a better relationship with myself and also with others. As I said earlier, it's a very long process, and I'm still struggling in dealing with others. My friends don't see a complete transformation in me, although many say I'm close. But that has in no way discouraged me to leave this path. After all, what matters to me the most is how I have started to perceive myself and the world around me. Therefore, I have continued my search while practicing Vipassana meditation. A couple of years ago, a lovely speaker in this conference, Rosalind Ross, told me of Marshall Rosenberg, who was a psychologist by profession and developed a theory called non-violent communication. He demonstrates that every conflict can be resolved by understanding the need of other party with love and compassion. When I watched his video for the first time in YouTube, his theory resonated with me. I had heard and known that some of the people resolve conflicts without much effort, and it was beyond my comprehension that it was possible to communicate and resolve conflicts without either being passive or aggressive. The more I have listened to him and have started to practice his theory, the more I find myself pulling towards communicating non-violently. Marshall addresses the fundamental gap between hearing and listening as the cause of conflicts. We mostly listen to another person without fully engaging and understanding their needs. In his words, we diagnose, not understand or hear. We don't request, but we demand. He says, when we demand instead of request, everyone pays the price of emotional energy. We operate from sheer feelings, and feelings change. He goes on to say that we do not convey our needs and let the other party know that we are in pain and our needs are not being met. It is very important that we convey our feelings and needs at the same time and understand the difference between the two. He gives an example of a couple when a wife and a husband had an unresolved conflict for 39 years. The husband couldn't trust his wife that she would issue any check of a correct amount as she overdrew twice from the account. Every time the couple had to do a financial transaction, this simple issue created a friction and distress in their relationship. Marshall asked the husband what was his wife's need, and the husband answered, she was irresponsible. And when he asked the wife about the husband's need, she answered that he always does this. Instead of sitting down and discussing about each other's needs and feelings, the husband and wife both criticize one another. In this example, husband's need was to protect the money, and the wife's need was to be trusted again. Marshall says you ask for the need and you get diagnosis, analysis, and judgments, which means what one party thinks of other. When we criticize someone for every time they don't hold up to our expectation, we take away hope and push them to a regression path instead of helping them evolve. However, he advises to look through the thoughts, to see the needs. His theory makes total sense to me, but it has been so hard to implement these principles in my day-to-day life, as I need to change whole vocabulary I use. I have to understand not only my intentions, my motivations, but be aware of the difference between feelings, needs, and consider the other party's needs as well. Sometimes it's very exhausting. Nevertheless, if I want to improve my communication and consequently have a better relationship with others, that's the best way I have found so far. As I have been growing and progressing on my path, I realize how we are in a constant struggle and in conflict within ourselves, because we never try to challenge our flawed ways of looking at life. We don't want to leave our beliefs or patterns, as otherwise we would feel abandoned or empty. Our mind constantly needs something to latch onto, either some sort of dogma or superstition. We feel the deep desire to be associated with groups, to feel the sense of belongingness. We use harsh words and manipulative language to get our way. Not only that, we consider our way is the only way and the right way. We lack openness, which limits our potential to experience the greatest from great. When we do not get our way around, we feel resentful and hurt. Instead of conveying those feelings to others in a compassionate manner, we lash out on them without understanding their needs, as our desires and needs look more worthy to pay attention to. My sincere hope is to one day be living a life based on Rumi's quote, out beyond ideas of right and wrong. There is a field. I'll meet you there. In conclusion, if we understand each other's needs, observe them, and make requests, we can minimize conflicts. I encourage you to be using non-violent communication in your daily life, as this may help you to improve your relationships, not with yourself, but with others. You might stumble for a little while and fail to resolve conflicts, but with just being aware and continue to practice, one day, hopefully, it will come naturally. I'm going to close my talk with a couple of quotes. Marshall Rosenberg says, Your presence is the most precious gift you can offer to another human being. A quote by Anonymous, which I found online, don't judge for the people, the choices they make when you do not know the options they had to choose from. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm grateful for your time and attention. Thank you very much.